All right, there we go. Okay, so Senator, thank you as always for your time. And this is the American Council of Engineering Companies Florida chapter, as well as other members of the Florida Engineering Society. I think, Alan, we had about 89 folks that have registered to participate. So that just shows how appreciative we are of your time for us. And for those on the line, I just want to make quick introductions. I think he really doesn't need any introductions, but Wilton Simpson is the president designate for the Florida Senate, which means when they come back in a few short weeks, it's getting close now, sir, he will be sworn in as the Senate president for the Florida Senate. He resides from Trilby, Florida. And I got to confess, sir, until you ran for the legislature, I didn't really know there's a Trilby, Florida. So that was that was new to me. He's a farmer as well as an entrepreneur. I know he when he's not doing that, he's not on the road with campaigns, that he loves spending time with his family, and he has 2 granddaughters. I follow him on Twitter, so I know he appreciates time with them as much as possible. And let me just say this before I turn it over to Alan. He's going to be moderating with the questions. I want to tell everybody that's on the phone or on this webinar that as the lobbyist for the engineers in Florida for 20 plus years, the thing that you value the most is being able to get an ear from a leader in the legislature when you need it. And I will tell you, Wilton Simpson's door is always open. I don't care if it's the first day of session or the 60th day. We can get in to see him. We can get our message to him. He's always accessible to us, and that's really all you can ask for. So, sir, on behalf of the folks that are on this webinar, I want to first thank you for that, and thank you for taking the time. I know you got a lot going on with the campaigns, for being here with us today.
No, well, thank you for having me, John, and we appreciate all your help. I think I met with this group maybe 5 or 6 years ago on a campaign deal for myself down in West Palm or Boca Raton or somewhere down there, maybe. And
yes, sir.
And so anyways, it's kind of amazing how fast years go by. This is obviously, I've served 8 years now in the Senate, and my last 2 are coming, and it's just amazing how quickly they go by. And yeah, they're still beating on me for, you know, the races and the fundraising and all the thing. We've got 3 weeks to go, and that'll be a very pleasant 3 weeks to get behind us.
Amen. Well, I'll turn it over to Alan Douglas, who's the executive director for our association.
All right, thank you, John. And welcome, Senator. Actually, it was about 5 years ago you came to our annual conference in Fort Lauderdale, so you were very close. But it's good to see you again, sir. I would just to open up, I would just give you a few minutes to make your opening remarks, kind of what our members are interested in. And I've got a few specific questions, but just kind of this is kind of a messed up year, as we all know, and I don't think the upcoming legislative session is going to be the easiest one ever, just from a logistical standpoint, if nothing else. How do you see it all working? What are going to be the priorities of the legislature this year, and what are going to be your priorities this year?
Yeah, no, and thanks for that kind of question. Obviously, when you serve for 8 years, all the 8 years I've served, we've had money, right? So I came in Speaker Weatherford in President Gates's term, and we had just been through the Great Recession. We were coming out of it. So the legislature has had resources for my first 8 years, which was, if you've never seen the other side of it, this was a very pleasant time to serve from a financial perspective. But clearly, there are anywhere from $3 to $5-6 million may have to be cut out of the budget this year. That's real money, and we won't know until probably January how much of what the target should be. Right now, I think they're saying $3 billion in the first year approximately, and then $2 billion in the second year. And our goal would be is to take care of all of that in the first year, so that hopefully in the second year, the 22 year, there would be some resources to be able to start spending again on priorities. And I think that's probably going to be the biggest challenge the first year, is the budget and making sure that we are appropriately equipped with our reserves, because obviously we have hurricanes from time to time, and normally when the governor makes that proclamation of emergency, they have those resources to react. And the ones we've had in recent history has been $500 to $700 million of spending. So if we left there in March with over $4 billion in reserves. And we were very proud of that because obviously if you have a hurricane, the governor will have the resources that it takes to get us through that crisis. And this then the pandemic happens. Clearly, we were in a very serious recession, at least for one quarter. Depending on how the next 2 or 3 months go, we could be back in a recession. You could have a double dip, depending on the national stage. I think it's maybe more important for that because clearly, depending on who gets elected, will determine tax rates, regulatory structure, and things of that nature. So I don't know if we'll know how bad it will be until, again, like I said, probably by early next year for the following session. That's a major priority. And then in year 2, not only will we be adjusting off the base of the of year 1, but then we have to do redistricting. And that's a really tall task. And the legislature every 10-year redistricts the seats. The last time we did that in 2010, those maps were deemed unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court ultimately drew those maps in 16, or approved a map that had been drawn. And so we get another chance of redrawing the maps in 22 that would last the next decade as long as we can do it constitutionally. And we're going to do our best to make sure that we are doing everything within the guidelines set forth by the Supreme Court 4 years ago when they drew these maps. So those are our 2 big challenges. My priorities have been pretty simple. I want us to be very fiscally responsible in the state. We have one major flaw on our balance sheet, the unfunded liability of our pension. By the Feds going to 0 on interest rates, it's really created an environment where that's going to be much worse because they rely on those short-term overnight rates for a lot of the income from that pension system. And short-term interest rates, of course, they're now well below 1%. So that's going to take a dramatic hit. So I think I hope we'll get something done there on that issue. And then, I've talked about this for several years, a septic to sewer program. Most of our challenges is we have the pollution that's coming into our state from the growth, from septic systems is probably anywhere from 30 to 50% of our pollution levels. Very expensive to deal with that, but it's something that if we don't start getting our hands around it, it's making all of our drinking water potential and quality of life issues are getting worse because of the nutrient load in the water. And some folks say, well, it's agriculture is causing it, and it's causing a small part of it. But when you look at what is the biggest single impact we can have on that, it would be a septic to sewer type program, because that's where the vast majority of the nutrient load is. And we've been doing other things, advanced wastewater treatment on those wastewater treatment facilities, the reclaimed water, very important to me. We're going to do something with that. Right now, about 700 million gallons a day are going to Tide. And I think that every bit of that could be, I know it can be utilized. I think that in the next 10 years or less, it will be being utilized. And, that represents probably 5 to 8% of the water withdrawal on a daily basis from the aquifer. And with the population boom we have going on, which I think will continue even in a recessionary time, we're going to have new drinking water sources, and reclaimed water obviously can stop saltwater intrusion. It can reclaim wetlands. It can go for drinking water. And so there's all types of things you can do with that reclaimed water. We need to get ahead of that curve also. And then probably one of my favorite things that I don't talk about often, but the adoption and foster care process. A lot of the things that ail us in our society is because I personally don't think we do an adequate job, and maybe because of not enough resources, but we have over 30,000 kids in foster care. And, if we could reduce that number and bring permanency to that number, say to, 10 or 15,000, which on a population our size, you may always have that number because there's, continuous children coming into that system. I think we have to do things to bring permanency to that group, and making sure that our CBCs are really more of a function of making sure that adoptive parents have got the resources they need and the things they need to move forward with those kids. And I think if we can bring permanency to those lives quicker, a quality of life issue, you'll transform a lot of the things that we spend money today on the juvenile justice system you know, other mental health and alike, because obviously a lot of these kids are very disadvantaged that are moving, you know, from home to home, you know, until they age out of it, and then they really don't have any permanent family at that time to be able to lean on for education or college or jobs or anything else. And it creates a repetitive motion in the, you know, downward motion, I think, in most cases. And if we can reverse that, that would be a big win also. So those are, you know, some of the priorities that we'll be looking at this year. And we really appreciate your help and your team and for what y'all are doing for us. I'll be glad to try to answer some questions if they're not really hard. If they're really hard questions, then I'll hit one of the buttons up here. It's gonna be like, hey, it's fading out. The technology's bad.
Are you current with all your mathematical symbols?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've got this one up here. It's got a big X on it, just in case I need it.
Okay, so if you get all that done in the first week, what are you going to do in the second week?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I've got a few questions. You actually kind of touched on you know, kind of each one of them. But you know, one thing that's very important to us, obviously, a lot of our membership, and just so you know, the ACEC, the American Council of Engineering Companies, that's the engineering firms. Separate group is Florida Engineering Society, which are individual engineers, and they come from all walks, private practice, government, and academia, and such. So kind of a diverse crowd within the engineering community, but a lot of them deal in transportation, and obviously that's very important to them. And you know, we were very happy to see at the beginning of the COVID crisis, you know, the governor took steps to not only, you know, keep the money flowing at the time, but you know, to actually speed up some projects and fast track them and get some things done while the traffic was light. But where do you see that going as we go forward? We're starting to hear, you know, some rumblings about taking money out of the transportation fund and those kinds of things. And I know it's early in the process, but you know, what are your thoughts along those lines and how we're going to keep that sector moving?
I would certainly hope that we would not take any money out of the trust fund. I presume that, and I don't have fresh numbers, but there's going to be some less money in that trust fund to begin with, just because of the lack of fuel demand and usage for even now. It's less than it was pre-March. So there's going to be some resources taken out of that money. I think the biggest thing is when you look at the transportation system, we and President Galvano did an MCOR bill, which everyone knows about, and those are major arterial roads that will take you from the Suncoast to I-10 and the Collier Parkway, and then connect the turnpike into it. And I think this year is like $135 million that it would take out of GR to go towards the continuing of those roads. What I suspect is that in some fashion there will be some modifications there, and by modifications I mean either back up and do a lot more of what I felt all along is we should fund the current arterial roads. We need to get to the systems we have. In my area, the Hillsborough, Tampa Bay area, I live in Pasco County, but represent north of here into Hernando and Citrus. That Suncoast going north is very important to that region of the state. But there are also hundreds of millions of dollars of roads that need to be upgraded from 2 to 4 to 6 lanes that are connecting the Suncoast Parkway to the communities that are already here. County Line Road here. I mean, there's tons of roads just around my area of the state that need to have what are hundreds of millions of dollars spent to bring them up to the quality standard. And I would assume, and I know this is true, it's that way everywhere. Jacksonville's got unique issues, Miami-Dade, Orlando, any section that you would look at would have those problems. So what I'm hoping for is that in the next 2 years, if we don't have MCORS, is that we will have some sort of a major initiative with those resources that would go to those kind of roads. So in other words, keep it in the family, but maybe redirect it. And my thought there is, I love the idea of the MCORS. I thought President Galvano was a bold initiative, but the reality is you have to benchmark that against what can we afford now. And, and do you leave that on the, on the record, and then maybe some future legislators will refund it, or do you take and repurpose that for, a lot of construction and road growth that we need already that's also not happening because we don't have the resources. So I think we have to bring some efficiencies there, but it certainly is not my desire to sweep any money out of that trust fund.
All right, that's good to hear. Good to hear. The next one. Recently, there was an op-ed published, I believe, in the Tampa Bay Times that was authored by yourself and Representative Sprouse, the incoming House Speaker, dealing with funding coastal resiliency and flood mitigation projects. You touched on some water and some different areas of the water arena, and we've got a large number of members that are in that sector. Can you describe your vision of the best way to what most caught us about that is we understand, you know, the immediate needs of the state, and it's not a good time to be walking in and asking for new money. You know, but looking to the future, what do you think the best way is to prioritize, fund, and administer the implementation of the coastal resilience projects into the future? And I know you had mentioned in the article, which is what really caught people's attention, that you said just as we do with our state transportation work plan. So I think we all think that works very well, and we'd love to see that at some point in the future be used for the water infrastructure as well.
I think on that project, it would be not unlike the septic to sewer project or the transportation project. You need a source of funds, a trust fund of sorts, or a designated pot of money that can go to these projects. And I personally don't like the idea of bonding projects and bonding money. That sometimes has to be done depending on the size of them. But I really like to, here's what I would say about these things. So if you come into this year one and we have to do a significant cut to the budget, as that budget recovers in future years, and my year two, hopefully, and we will then have resources to be able to spend, that we would redirect in some of these areas that we have cut to these types of projects. And so we can, you know, they're on the road, obviously it's through gas taxes and other things. I think we should set up a specific section of either GR or a specific tax that we currently collect, a resiliency tax. In other words, put some of the taxes that we are currently collecting into that pot of money that would be designated for that. And what's important about that, whether it's septic to sewer or, you know, coastal resiliency or the trust fund, is to make sure that it's there so that local governments, as they're not only engineering and designing these projects, will know that if they're putting their resources into these projects, there will be state resources, matching grants. And what you would typically see, or is what we do on most of these type of projects, is depending on the size of your county would depend on the size of the matches, right? And depending on the significance of the projects. So smaller disadvantaged counties certainly cannot afford the same thing that Hillsborough County could afford. And so some of those projects in North Florida in these smaller counties may be 100% funded through a program like this. But it has to be significant dollars. And when I mean significant, it has to be 50 or 100, you know, more than 50 million a year if you're going to make real impact on these types of projects. And so I think making sure we're coordinating that with the governor's office, with the chief resiliency officer, will be very important. But then letting the local governments know that we are very serious about a funding source for these projects. And I don't remember the entire article that we wrote there, but the truth of the matter is, if we don't start doing something now, we've got a lot of properties that will be in jeopardy 20, 50, 75 years from now. And I believe it will take that long to probably build a lot of these projects, because there's so much of it. There's many billions, tens of billions of dollars of projects to do. And so we have to take it, I believe, that serious. And I'm hoping it may be some in the first year to get it rolling. And then the second year, really put a good funding source towards it to start paying that down. Because obviously, we all know sea level rise is happening. And we've got to deal with that issue. And that would be another good example of, should you do MCORS and spend billions of dollars doing that, or should you back up and spend billions of dollars doing this? And so, those are some of the decision points we're going to have to make in the next 12 and 24 months.
Well, thank you, Senator. In the few minutes that we got left, first of all, I'd like to just say that obviously we'll be in touch through John and others with your office as we near session and start moving through session. And, you know, we want to offer our assistance to you in getting some of these things going. Not just be there to be asking for what we want, but to assist. And I think, you know, our membership is full of people who are experts in these areas, whether it's transportation or water or what have you, energy, you know, buildings and structures. There's all kinds of things, and these people are the experts. So anything that we can do to assist you from that perspective, please let us know. And I know we've just got a few minutes left, but let me ask you a question. You know, our members really enjoy, you know, usually, you know, committee weeks. Every now and then we'll do it during session, but we'll have our Professional Engineers Day at the Capitol. What is that kind of stuff looking like coming up this year? And in addition to that, not just bringing members to the Capitol, but what does it just look like in general over there? I've been reading some stories, and you know, it seems like it's kind of up in the air now as to, you know, who's going to be allowed into that Capitol and when. And, you know, I live here in Tallahassee. I'm a couple blocks from the Capitol, and it's been eerie to see the thing locked up for the last 6 or 7 months. So just that might be more of a personal question, but I do know our members enjoy coming up here and visiting their legislators.
Oh, no, yeah, and we're going to have it as open as we can. We brought up Tampa General a few weeks ago. They've done a lot of work, and it's probably other hospital systems has around the state, but they do a lot of work with the Fortune 100 to 500 companies around the Tampa Bay market area. Very reputable, and so they've come up and gave us some ideas for the swearing in ceremony that we'll have in mid-November. That's a completely different process than what we may be looking at by March, because I believe with the therapeutic medicines and antivirals and potentially a vaccine, we could be in a different place 5 months from now. So to predict it would be a little tough, but let's assume that we're in a similar place as we are today. The vaccine hasn't made it out yet, or is not widely distributed. You know, clearly we're not going to have herd immunity by March or even January when we'll start committee weeks. I think there's going to be a lot of Zoom calls with senators. Instead of you coming into my office, we'll be Zooming in, right? Or some sort of a Zoom type system into the offices. And I think we're looking at various models where there's civic centers around Tallahassee that may be utilized to have the general public be able to come in and testify on specific bills. They can social distance in those areas. The technology can be set up, and we can still allow folks to testify. So we're looking at those type of solutions to allow people to testify. Clearly, emails will be very popular to be able to email in suggestions on individual bills and references. But this first year is, I believe, will be different than I hope all others. Hopefully by the second year, we'll have a vaccine and we'll have herd immunity, and it will go back to more normal. But you're going to see less traffic in that building, and I suspect that we won't have any traffic walking around in the building in the hallways or common areas. It'll be a case-by-case basis if certain senators want to bring in a guest. But my instinct is that the vast majority of that will be through technology, and offering that, you know, committee time will be through technology also.
Hey, great. I was a bit remiss just a minute, and I will wait to see John Johnson testifying at the Civic Center. We'll have to record that one. I was a bit remiss. Also on our screen here, we have Peter Moore, who is the chairman, past president, and then chairman of our legislative committee. And so, Peter, as we wrap up, did you have any questions or any follow-up? I know you're very involved in the water issue and much more knowledge.
Senator, I just wanted to thank you for your op-ed. Seeing the leadership from you and Representative Sproles is very important to us. You know, I'm a native Floridian. I'm happy to be raising my daughter down here in South Florida. We're kind of at the end where everything else comes from. So, but no, we really want to continue to see that. You know, obviously this won't be a great funding year, but we'd love to see some policy. We'd love to help you write policy. We'd love to help you push it.
No, and thank you for that. And Speaker Sprouse is going to be great. You know, he's from Pinellas County, and we've known each other most of our lives, or what little bit of life he's had, right? And he's about half. And but he is really a good man, and I know he's very concerned about that issue also. And I think we're going to have a really good partnership. So I'm really hopeful that we'll get some good things done on that issue.
Excellent. We very much appreciate that.
All right, John, did you have anything else?
No, I just, again, as always, I'm grateful for Senator Simpson, always willing to engage with us, and whether in or out of session. And I can't begin to tell the group what's on his plate right now. We're three weeks out from a really historic election, and he's working on a lot of tight races, and I know we're just grateful to have your time today.
Thank you, John. Thanks for all your help.
Our pleasure.
Senator, best of luck in the elections. I know you've been busy for a long time, probably ready for those to be over with, like a lot of the rest of us, but we certainly do appreciate your time. For our members out there that are listening in, if you submitted a question, because I know I had a couple come in by text as we were sitting here, didn't want to fire those off without a little warning. So I'll be glad to take those to Senator Simpson's office and get a message for you. Don't think those will go ignored. And with that, Senator, we very much appreciate the time, and look forward to seeing you back in Tallahassee.
Thank you, guys.
Take care now.
Thank you.